You're being manipulated right now, and you don't even know it. Not through force, not through threats, but through something far more sophisticated. Emotional programming so subtle you think it's your own idea. Today, I'm exposing the most effective female manipulation tactics that control millions of men daily. Tactics so refined that you'll thank her for controlling you. This isn't about demonizing women. It's about recognizing patterns that destroy masculine sovereignty. The most dangerous manipulation isn't the one you can see. It's the one that feels like love, care, genuine concern. It operates below your conscious awareness, targeting your emotional operating system while your logical mind sleeps. By the time you realize what's happening, you've already reorganized your entire life around her subtle suggestions, believing they were your decisions all along. Let me tell you about subtle female manipulation in relationships. It doesn't look like manipulation. That's why it works. It looks like affection, sounds like care, feels like partnership. She's not demanding or aggressive. She's sweet, understanding, supportive. But underneath that softness is strategic influence designed to reshape your behavior without triggering your defenses. The genius is in the disguise. When a man tries to control, it's obvious, direct, forceful, clumsy. When a woman manipulates, it's invisible, indirect, emotional, elegant. She doesn't tell you what to do. She makes you feel like doing what she wants. She doesn't force compliance. She creates conditions where compliance feels like your choice. Consider how she uses tone, timing, and language. The disappointed sigh when you mention boys' night. The slight coldness after you disagree. The extra warmth when you comply. These aren't random emotional expressions. They're behavioral conditioning tools. You're being trained like Pavlov's dog, except instead of bells, it's emotional temperatures. The psychological persuasion feels so natural because it hijacks your protective instincts. You want to make her happy, keep her comfortable, see her smile. These noble impulses become the very tools of your control. Your desire to be a good man becomes the pathway to becoming a controlled man. Now let's examine the complement command mechanism, the most powerful tool in female manipulation. It works like this. First, she validates your ego with genuine seeming praise. You're so smart. You always know what to do. I trust your judgment completely. Your defenses drop, your ego purrs, your critical thinking relaxes. Then, while you're basking in that validation, comes the behavioral suggestion. A smart man like you would understand why I need this. Someone with your judgment would see the wisdom in this decision. I trust you to handle this the right way. The command is wrapped in compliment, making resistance feel like betraying the very identity she just validated. This formula, emotional reward followed by behavioral suggestion, is devastatingly effective because it makes compliance feel like confirmation of your positive qualities. Refusing doesn't just mean saying no to her request. It means denying the identity she's attributed to you. Are you really smart if you don't understand? Do you really have good judgment if you disagree? The emotional satisfaction of being seen as intelligent, capable, trustworthy becomes the drug that ensures compliance. You're not obeying because you're weak. You're obeying because compliance has been neurologically linked to ego gratification. Every time you comply, you get a hit of validation. You become addicted to being the man she says you are. Let's talk about how she exploits masculine pride and identity. Every man has a self-image: protector, provider, rational thinker, emotional rock. She identifies these identity markers and uses them as leverage points. A real man would handle this without getting emotional. A strong man like you doesn't need to prove anything. A good provider would want his family to have this. Notice the pattern. She's not attacking your masculinity, she's weaponizing it. Your own pride becomes the enforcement mechanism. You can't refuse without feeling like less of a man. She's turned your strength into your weakness, your pride into your prison. The reinforcement of social stereotypes adds another layer. Real men don't get jealous, while she maintains inappropriate friendships. Strong men support their woman's dreams, while she pursues things that damage the relationship. Secure men don't need constant reassurance, while she withdraws affection. These aren't observations. They're behavioral commands disguised as masculine ideals. The manipulation through moral positioning is particularly insidious. She frames her desires as moral imperatives. Refusing her isn't just disagreeing, it's being a bad person. If you loved me, you would. A caring partner would understand. Someone who valued this relationship would. Your integrity becomes the very thing that ensures your compliance. The internal pressure builds because you're not fighting her. You're fighting your own self-concept. To maintain your identity as a good, strong, caring man, you must do what she wants. The manipulation is complete when you police yourself more strictly than she ever could. You become your own warden, imprisoning yourself with your own values turned against you. Now let's examine emotional conditioning over time. This doesn't happen overnight. It's gradual, patient, deliberate. She starts with small requests, reasonable suggestions, minor adjustments. Each compliance is rewarded with affection, validation, appreciation. Your brain starts linking obedience with positive outcomes. The repetition of praise builds emotional dependence. You become addicted to her approval, her validation, her emotional rewards. Like a dealer controlling an addict, she controls the supply of what you've grown to need. The withdrawals when you displease her become unbearable. You'll do anything to get back to that warm feeling of her approval. She establishes trust before delivering manipulation. Months or years of seemingly genuine care create a foundation. You lower your guard because she's proven herself trustworthy. But that trust becomes the Trojan horse for deeper control. Once she has your complete trust, you stop questioning her motives. The woman you trust most becomes the one who can manipulate you most effectively. The normalization happens through repeated emotional framing. The first time she uses emotional manipulation, you might notice. The 100th time, it's just how things work. What once felt wrong now feels normal. The abnormal becomes acceptable through sheer repetition. Your resistance erodes not through force, but through exhaustion. Small acts of agreement become long-term obedience patterns. Saying yes to little things trains you to say yes to big things. Each compliance makes the next one easier. You develop a habit of agreement, a pattern of submission that feels like cooperation. The neural pathways of compliance become superhighways in your brain. Let's discuss manipulation through fear and guilt, the darker tools. Fear of losing love becomes a control mechanism. She doesn't threaten to leave directly. She creates ambient anxiety about loss. The subtle withdrawal of affection when you displease her. The stories about friends whose relationships ended. The reminders of how good you have it. The fear lives in your subconscious, guiding every decision. This fear operates subconsciously. You find yourself avoiding behaviors that might upset her, not because she demanded it, but because you fear the consequences. You self-censor, self-limit, self-control based on projected fears she's carefully cultivated. You become the enforcer of her unspoken rules. Guilt-based persuasion makes refusal feel immoral. After everything I've done for you, I guess my feelings don't matter. I thought you were different. These aren't expressions of hurt. They're guilt triggers designed to override your boundaries. Refusing her becomes hurting her, and good men don't hurt women. The guilt becomes a chain stronger than any physical restraint. She exploits emotional insecurity masterfully. Your fear of not being enough, of losing her, of being alone, these become control levers. She doesn't have to threaten. Your insecurity does the work. The fear of consequences becomes stronger than the desire for autonomy. Your own mind becomes the prison. Your insecurities the bars. The subtle link between disobedience and emotional punishment is never stated but always implied. Disagree and face coldness. Refuse and feel distance. Resist and experience withdrawal. You learn through emotional conditioning that compliance brings peace, resistance brings pain. The punishment is never acknowledged but always felt. Now let's examine preemptive framing and future control. She sets emotional narratives before conflicts even arise. I know you'll understand when I explain. You're not the jealous type, so this won't bother you. Since you're so rational, you'll see why this makes sense. She's programming your response before presenting the situation. This predictive framing shapes your reactions in advance. You can't get upset about the inappropriate friendship because she's already established you're not the jealous type. You can't disagree with her decision because she's already framed you as understanding. Your reaction is predetermined by her framing. She's written the script. You're just playing your part. She builds trust as a platform for later manipulation. The months of being reasonable, caring, supportive, these aren't just genuine behaviors. They're investment in future control. Once she's established herself as trustworthy, you stop questioning. That's when the real manipulation begins. The trust account she's built gets spent on controlling you. The emotional scripts she provides become your thoughts. When conflict arises, you find yourself thinking in her words, her framings, her logic. She's right. A secure man wouldn't be bothered by this. You've internalized her voice as your own inner dialogue. Her thoughts become your thoughts through repetition and emotional association. Let's talk about ego stimulation as a tool of influence. Flattery is psychological anesthesia for critical thinking. While you're high on her validation, your analytical mind goes offline. You can't think clearly when your ego is being massaged. The validation feels so good that you don't want to risk losing it by disagreeing. She gives you the illusion of admiration while extracting compliance. You're so much smarter than other men, while she guides your decisions. You're nothing like my ex, while she shapes you into what she wants. You really understand me, while she programs your understanding. The admiration is the sugar that helps the control go down. Recognition and validation become invisible currency in the relationship. She pays you in ego strokes, you pay her in compliance. But the exchange rate is never fair. A few words of praise buy major life decisions. A little validation purchases complete behavioral change. You're trading your sovereignty for fleeting feelings of worth. The satisfaction of being understood becomes a form of control. She mirrors your thoughts, validates your feelings, confirms your perspectives, but only the ones that align with her agenda. The thoughts she doesn't validate gradually disappear. You're being edited, one validation at a time. Your personality is being sculpted to her specifications. Now let's examine how she targets emotional weak points. Every man has vulnerabilities, insecurity about success, fear of inadequacy, need for respect. She identifies these through observation, conversation, testing. Your emotional map becomes her playbook. She knows exactly where to apply pressure for maximum effect. She tailors manipulation to fit your specific personality and emotional history. If you fear abandonment, she triggers that fear subtly. If you need validation, she controls the supply. If you pride yourself on logic, she frames her desires as rational conclusions. The manipulation is customized to your psychological profile like a key cut for your specific lock. These emotional buttons create predictable reactions. She knows exactly what to say to trigger guilt, fear, compliance. I guess I'm just not important enough. Triggers guilt. Maybe we want different things. Triggers fear. A smart man would see the opportunity here. Triggers pride compliance. She's learned your emotional combinations like a safe cracker. The manipulation is customized through careful emotional study. She's been observing, noting, cataloging your responses. Every emotional reaction you've had has been filed away for future use. She knows your triggers better than you do. Your emotional responses have been mapped, categorized, weaponized. Let's discuss disguised control behind harmony. The manipulation hides under the mask of love, peace, and trust. It doesn't feel like control because it's wrapped in positive emotions. The chains are made of silk, but they're still chains. The prison is comfortable, but it's still a prison. Emotional control replaces open authority or aggression. She doesn't need to demand or threaten when she can influence and suggest. Why fight when she can make you think her ideas are your ideas? Why force when she can make compliance feel like choice? The softest control is the strongest because it meets no resistance. The agreement you experience is an illusion of partnership. You think you're making decisions together, but she's orchestrating the outcome. The discussion is theatre. The conclusion was predetermined. Your agreement was engineered, not earned. You're voting in an election that's already been decided. The false sense of equality conceals hidden direction. You believe you're equals while she's directing the relationship. The equality is performative. Underneath, there's a clear power dynamic, and you're not on top. She leads from behind, letting you think you're in charge while she steers everything. Now, let's talk about breaking the manipulative cycle. Awareness is your first defense. Once you see the patterns, they lose power. Recognition is like turning on lights in a dark room. The shadows that seemed threatening are revealed as illusions. Knowledge of manipulation is immunity to manipulation. You must learn to separate genuine affection from strategic communication. Real love doesn't require manipulation. Genuine care doesn't need tactics. If she has to manipulate to get what she wants isn't good for you. True love empowers, manipulation controls. Respond calmly without emotional investment. When she deploys emotional tactics, remain centered. Don't fight the manipulation, simply don't respond to it. Emotional manipulation requires emotional reaction. Without your emotional participation, her tactics fail. Be the rock that waves crash against without effect. Reclaim self-respect through conscious detachment. You don't need to leave the relationship, but you need to leave the manipulation dynamic. Detach from the need for her validation. Disconnect from the fear of her disapproval. Disengage from the guilt she tries to trigger. Your emotional independence is your freedom. Let's examine linguistic framing and suggestion patterns. She uses word structures designed to link identity and behavior. A loving husband would links your identity as loving to specific behavior. Someone who cares would connect caring to compliance. Language becomes programming code for your behavior. Every sentence is designed to create specific responses. Compliments are used as indirect commands. You're so generous becomes pressure to give. You're so understanding becomes obligation to accept. You're so strong becomes a requirement to endure. The compliment creates the expectation of living up to it. You're trapped by positive descriptions. She creates conversational traps that appear harmless but shape belief. Don't you think that presents her opinion as your conclusion? Wouldn't you agree that makes disagreement seem unreasonable? Everyone knows that. Makes resistance seem ignorant. The phrasing predetermines the response. The question contains its own answer. The psychology of how phrasing affects perception is profound. You never listen versus I feel unheard. Same message, different impact. She chooses phrasing that triggers guilt rather than defensiveness, compliance rather than resistance. Language is her scalpel precisely cutting to achieve desired results. Let's discuss the psychology of compliance. Emotional satisfaction leads to automatic agreement. When you feel good, you say yes. She makes you feel good right before requests. The positive emotional state becomes associated with agreement. Your brain learns compliance equals pleasure, resistance equals pain. The human tendency to conform to flattery is hardwired. We believe positive things about ourselves and act to confirm them. She tells you who you are, then expects you to act accordingly. Your behavior conforms to her description. You become who she says you are to maintain the positive identity. Ego gratification replaces logical analysis. While you're enjoying the validation, your critical thinking is offline. You can't analyze manipulation while you're high on praise. The ego boost becomes cognitive impairment. Flattery is a drug that impairs judgment as surely as alcohol. Behavioral conditioning happens through positive reinforcement. Every compliance is rewarded. Every resistance is punished through withdrawal. You're being trained, shaped, molded through emotional consequences. Your behavior is being programmed through pleasure and pain, reward and punishment. Now let's examine cultural programming of masculinity. Social expectations of being a real man make you manipulable. The culture has programmed you with beliefs about masculinity that become leverage points for manipulation. Your strength becomes your vulnerability when turned against you. Emotional suppression is weakness disguised as strength. You've been taught that real men don't show emotion, don't complain, don't resist emotional pressure. This emotional suppression makes you an easy target. You can't fight what you can't express. Your silence becomes consent. The burden of proving calmness and tolerance, even when wronged, becomes your prison. You have to remain stoic while she deploys emotional tactics. You must stay rational while she uses irrationality as a weapon. The requirement to be the bigger person ensures you never address the manipulation. Your maturity becomes your muzzle. Culture reinforces emotional obedience in men through shame. Expressing frustration with emotional manipulation gets labeled as weakness, insecurity, misogyny. You're shamed for recognizing and resisting the very tactics being used against you. Society becomes her ally in keeping you controlled. Let's talk about emotional awareness and detachment as your defense. Recognize emotional manipulation in real time. When you feel sudden guilt, ask why. When you feel unexpected fear, examine the source. When validation makes you agreeable, pause and analyze. Question every emotional spike. Stay centered when facing flattery or guilt pressure. Your emotional center is your fortress. When she deploys tactics, retreat to that center. From that position of stability, you can see manipulation for what it is, attempted control. Your awareness becomes your armor. Use logic as a shield against emotional persuasion. When she makes emotional arguments, respond with logical questions. When she deploys guilt, examine facts. When she uses fear, analyze probability. Logic disrupts emotional manipulation. Reason defeats emotional reasoning. Develop an unreactive masculine presence. Don't fight manipulation with emotion. Don't resist with anger. Simply be unmoved. Your lack of reaction is your strength. Emotional tactics require emotional responses. Give her nothing to work with. Become emotionally unreactive, not emotionally dead. Finally, let's discuss mastery through pattern recognition. See emotional tactics as predictable behavioral scripts. Once you recognize the patterns, you can predict the manipulation. Prediction allows preparation. Preparation enables resistance. Knowledge becomes power. Use awareness instead of resistance to neutralize control. You don't need to fight every manipulation. Sometimes simple awareness is enough. "I see what you're doing," stated calmly without emotion, often stops manipulation cold. Recognition defeats deception. Turn observation into emotional power. Every manipulation attempt teaches you about her tactics, her fears, her desires. Use this information to understand, not to counter-manipulate, but to make informed decisions about the relationship. Her manipulation reveals her character. Transform manipulation into self-knowledge and strength. Every time you recognize and resist manipulation, you grow stronger. Every pattern you identify makes you wiser. The manipulation meant to control you becomes the training that frees you. Her tactics become your teacher. Here's the practical application. For the next week, simply observe without reacting. When you feel emotional pressure, note it without responding. When guilt or fear arise suddenly, examine the source. When validation makes you agreeable, pause and think. Observation without reaction builds awareness. Document the patterns you notice. What phrases does she use repeatedly? What emotional sequences does she deploy? What are your consistent triggers? Knowledge is power, and documentation creates undeniable awareness. Writing makes the invisible visible. The deeper patterns reveal themselves over time. Notice how manipulation intensifies around certain events. When you're about to see friends, when you're making financial decisions, when you're showing independence. These patterns reveal her core fears and control needs. The manipulation map shows her insecurities. Understand the difference between conscious and unconscious manipulation. Some women deploy these tactics deliberately, with full awareness. Others learned them through modeling, absorbing them from mothers, friends, culture. The unconscious manipulator genuinely believes she's just expressing feelings. The conscious manipulator knows exactly what she's doing. Both are equally damaging to your sovereignty. The sophisticated manipulator uses multiple tactics simultaneously. While triggering your guilt, she's also stimulating your ego and exploiting your fear. This multi-layered approach makes resistance harder because you're fighting on multiple emotional fronts. Recognizing the full spectrum attack helps you maintain clarity. She's playing emotional chess while you're playing checkers. Remember, this isn't about becoming cold or distant. It's about becoming conscious. You can love someone without being controlled by them. You can care without complying with manipulation. You can be a good man without being a controlled man. Love doesn't require submission. The goal isn't to win or dominate, it's to maintain your sovereignty while in relationship. It's to love from strength, not from fear. It's to give from choice, not from guilt. It's to stay because you want to, not because you're emotionally imprisoned. True partnership requires two sovereign individuals. Understand that many women don't consciously deploy these tactics. They've learned them through culture, observation, experience. The manipulation might not be malicious, but that doesn't make it less real or less damaging to your masculine sovereignty. Intent doesn't determine impact. Your awareness changes the entire dynamic. When you see the patterns, they lose power. When you recognize the tactics, they stop working. When you understand the game, you can choose whether or not to play. Consciousness defeats conditioning. Gentlemen, you're not being paranoid. You're being perceptive. These patterns exist. These tactics are real. Your recognition of them isn't weakness or insecurity, it's wisdom. Trust your instincts when something feels manipulative. Your subconscious often recognizes what your conscious mind wants to deny. The most effective female manipulation works because it feels like love. But real love doesn't manipulate. Real love doesn't need tactics. Real love respects sovereignty. If you're being manipulated, you're not being loved. You're being controlled. Don't confuse control with care. Stay alert. Stay aware. Stay sovereign. Your emotional independence is your strength. Your awareness is your shield. Your logic is your sword. Use them wisely, and no manipulation can touch you. Your freedom depends on your consciousness. I want to hear your experiences. What manipulation tactics have you recognized? How did awareness change your relationship dynamics? Share your insights below, not to attack women, but to help men maintain their sovereignty while in relationship. Your awareness might be the key to another man's freedom.